Look around the room you're sitting in right now. Like,
Yeah.
just do a quick scan of the shelves, the mantle, your desk.
To take a second to look.
Right, take it all in. How many of the random objects taking up space around you are just things, and how many are actually, physical memories?
That's a really great distinction to make right up front.
Because if you really think about it, human memory is basically a leaky bucket. We lose the tiny details of our lives constantly.
Oh.
So we place these little objects around our homes to like catch the drips. I mean, are these knickknacks basically just external hard drives for our brains?
Oh, that is a highly accurate way to frame it, an external hard drive for the mind.
Yeah.
Because what we're looking at today isn't about the pathology of hoarding.
Right, definitely not.
And it isn't about mindlessly acquiring things to fill some emotional void. It is about evaluating the profound emotional geography that is hidden inside seemingly worthless bric-a-brac.
Which brings us to the mission for this deep dive. We are exploring a fascinating personal essay posted on May 12th, 2026 by Roberta Hill.
Right, titled The Memory Anchors of Misplaced Treasures.
Exactly. We're going to challenge the modern obsession with pristine minimalism and really unpack how physical objects actually hold the chapters of our lives together.
It is a compelling piece of writing because Hill forces us to examine the actual function these objects serve in our cognitive landscapes.
Rather than just judging them by their aesthetic value.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really understand why we hold on to all these things, Hill argues that we first have to look at the primal thrill of how we acquire them in the first place.
The art of the scavenge.
Yes. It's about finding value where everyone else just sees trash. She shares the story about her friend, Pam, from like 30 years ago. Pam apparently treated garbage night in wealthy neighborhoods like an Olympic sport.
An Olympic sport. Yeah, I love that description.
She'd go out cruising the streets, looking for discarded items, hauling them home, cleaning them up, and flipping them at garage sales.
What's fascinating here is Hill's specific observation about Pam's methodology. Pam wasn't looking for items with high monetary value.
Right, she wasn't hunting for hidden gold.
No, she was looking for objects with personality. Things someone else had tossed aside simply because the object, no longer fit their current lifestyle.
And Hill admits this tendency completely rubbed off on her. But, I mean, why is that appealing? Why do we get such a thrill from pulling something out of the trash?
Well, it represents a shift from passive consumerism to a form of urban archaeology.
Oh, urban archaeology.
Yeah, because when you walk into a big box store and purchase a mass-produced item, you are simply acquiring a commodity. The transaction is sterile.
Completely sterile.
But when someone rescues an object from the curb, they are restoring its agency. They are participating in a cultural exchange. It's an exercise in authenticity over pure commerce. You are uncovering a story that was about to be erased.
That cultural exchange seems to be a massive theme for her, especially when she lived in France. She introduces this concept of the French garage sale called a vide-grenier.
So, right.
Literally translated, it means empty attic. But she makes it clear this isn't like the yard sales you might see on a suburban Saturday morning where someone just wants to get rid of, like, old golf clubs.
No, the vide-grenier operates on an entirely different scale and ethos. Hill describes it as a festive, large-scale community event.
It takes over the whole town, right?
Exactly. It often takes over an entire village or street during the spring and summer. It is deeply rooted in a cultural tradition of recycling and sharing goods within a specific community. It's village-wide storytelling disguised as a market.
She contrasts that beautiful, localized sharing economy with what thrift shopping has become in a lot of places today.
The corporate shift.
Yeah, she talks about moving back to Montreal and actively seeking out real charity shops. The Salvation Army, hospital fundraisers, church bazaars, the places that smell faintly of old books, mothballs, and, as she so vividly puts it, a 1987 casserole.
That sensory detail is vital to her argument. Hill argues that those authentic community spots retain their history. You are quite literally buying an artifact of your own community.
Versus the giant corporate places.
Right. She draws a sharp contrast between these authentic spaces and the giant corporate-style thrift stores of today.
Oh, she skewers the corporate thrift stores.
Mm-hmm.
She jokes about them trying to sell used IKEA lamps for the price of a small mortgage.
Which highlights her central critique of modern thrifting. In Hill's view, the corporate thrift store has commodified the experience of scavenging.
It's just retail now.
Precisely. It has stripped away the localized history of the objects and replaced it with an arbitrary algorithm-driven price tag. The soul of the exchange is just gone.
But let's be real for a second and look at the flip side. The extreme minimalist movement exists for a very valid reason. I mean, clutter causes actual measurable anxiety for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. It's a well-documented psychological stressor.
And Hill admits to a pretty funny contradiction in her own essay. She talks about the romance of the vide-grenier, but then she mentions renting one of those tiny 4 by 4 meter spaces at a roadside flea market.
To sell her own stuff.
Yeah, she claims they did this to maintain the illusion that they were finally becoming minimalist people by clearing things out. And she admits, flat out, that they failed miserably.
They really did.
So I have to ask, is Hill just making romantic excuses for being a low-key hoarder? Is the thrill of the hunt just fundamentally stronger than our modern guilt about needing a clean space?
Well, that is the core conflict of the modern collector. We are bombarded by lifestyle brands telling us that a clean surface equals a clean mind.
Right.
Yet, evolutionary psychology tells us we are fundamentally hunter-gatherers. The dopamine hit of discovering something unique, of securing a resource, is a deeply ingrained biological mechanism.
So we're literally wired to want to gather these things.
Yes. It often completely overrides the intellectual desire for a minimalist aesthetic. Hill's attempt to sell her items was, a performative nod to modern design culture, but the biological gathering instinct ultimately won out.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Scavenging locally in your own city is one thing. Like, if you buy a chair, you just shove it in the back of your car.
Sure, the logistics are simple.
But the narrative in the essay shifts to what happens when this gathering habit collides with international travel. Now we're dealing with strict airline weight limits, tiny suitcases, and limited domestic real estate.
The logistics of wandering. It introduces a harsh physical barrier to an emotional impulse. It forces a negotiation between what the heart wants to remember and what the luggage can actually hold.
Hill outlines the evolution of her travel habits perfectly here. When she was younger, she'd travel with these giant, half-empty suitcases, practically begging to be filled with questionable purchases.
We've all been there.
Totally. But as she got older, the physical reality of modern travel set in. She notes that common sense occasionally tries to intervene.
Though tries is the operative word there.
Yeah, operative word.
Because as she details, her collection of antiques and mid-century modern pieces from living overseas quietly crossed the line from a carefully curated collection into a literal storage problem.
That storage problem is what actually drove her to those church bazaars to try and unload things. And to combat the sheer volume of stuff, she instituted a household rule.
The one-in, one-out rule.
Yes, one in, one out. If a new item comes into the house, something of equivalent size and category must leave.
A very rational system designed to artificially cap the physical accumulation.
But it's a rational system that works like a broken diet.
How so?
Well, think about the actual mechanics of that rule. It's like saying, if I buy a giant, profoundly meaningful piece of art in Cape Town, I just have to go home and throw away a spatially equivalent toaster.
That is a hilarious way to look at it, but you're not wrong.
The math completely falls apart because the emotional weight is completely lopsided. You cannot equate a functional kitchen appliance with a tangible piece of your personal history.
This raises an important question. Why do our logical constraints like baggage fees, limited shelf space, or self-imposed rules fail so spectacularly against these emotional impulses?
I would love to know.
The answer lies in the psychological function of travel itself. When we travel, we step completely outside our normal routines. We are temporarily trying on a different version of ourselves.
Oh, that makes sense.
The person wandering through a market in Paris feels fundamentally different from the person paying utility bills in Montreal.
The vacation self is always infinitely more adventurous and relaxed. I mean, we all want to be that person full time.
Precisely. And because we know those travel moments are inherently fleeting, we become desperate to capture them. The routine of daily life will inevitably erase that adventurous feeling.
So we buy the object.
We buy the object. We aren't really buying a trinket, we are buying a physical proxy of who we were in that exact moment. It is tangible proof that the relaxed, adventurous version of ourselves actually existed.
So what does this all mean for the physical space we live in? If these objects cause such logistical headaches and force us to play Tetris with our living rooms, what actually justifies the immense physical effort of bringing them home?
Well, Hill's core thesis is that these objects are physical timeline markers.
She calls them memory anchors, right?
Yes, memory anchors.
And to understand how powerful these anchors are, we really have to look at the extreme lengths she goes to secure them. The Cape Town scenario in the essay is wild.
Oh, the art print.
Yes. She and her partner are in South Africa, and at the very beginning of the trip, they find this extraordinary print. Now, rational behavior dictates you wait until the end of a trip to buy large, fragile art so you don't have to carry it around.
Or you simply arrange for the gallery to ship it to your home.
Right. They did neither of those things. They bought it immediately, and they still had at least 6 flights ahead of them across half the continent.
Just a logistical nightmare.
Hill describes sandwiching this print carefully between hard cardboard, wrapping it up like a priceless museum artifact. They physically hauled it through airports, tossed it into taxis, dragged it through hotels and luggage carousels.
And miraculously got it home intact.
Miraculously.
But that physical struggle is incredibly significant from a cognitive perspective. There is a psychological concept called the effort heuristic, which is tied to cognitive dissonance.
Okay, what does that mean in this context?
Essentially, humans assign greater value to things they had to suffer for. By expending that immense physical effort to transport the print across a continent, the brain encodes the memory much deeper. The struggle literally cements the neural pathway.
Wow, so the object absorbs the adventure. Every time she looks at the print on her wall, she doesn't just see a picture. Her brain replays the exhaustion of the airport, the bumpy taxi rides, the hypervigilance of protecting it.
Exactly. The effort transitioned the object from something they bought into a sacred artifact of their journey. The transportation itself became the memory anchor.
But it's crucial to point out that these anchors don't always require some epic cross-continental struggle. Sometimes the most mundane objects do the exact same heavy lifting, like Hill talks about their accidental sea-themed bathroom.
The curation of disparate geographies.
Yeah. They were on a cruise stop in Charlottetown, Nova Scotia, rented a car for the day, and stumbled onto a farmer-fisherman's yard sale. They bought 2 little nautical pieces for $5 each.
A total steal.
Right. And today, those $5 pieces sit in their bathroom right next to a driftwood fish that they bought at an outdoor fair in New Zealand.
Which is fascinating because geographically and temporally, Nova Scotia and New Zealand are worlds apart. They represent completely different eras of their lives.
Completely different trips.
But in the curated geography of their home, those timelines are collapsed. Those distinct memories are sitting right next to each other, placed in a permanent physical conversation.
And these anchors don't even have to be decorative. They can be deeply functional. My favorite detail in the entire essay is this little strawberry server they found at a French local fair.
Oh, the strawberry server, yes.
Hill notes she can't even remember if they paid 10 or 15 euros for it, but she knows that every single time they use it, every time that specific server physically touches the dining table, it brings back the exact day it was bought. It functions as an instant, tactile time machine.
That is sensory memory encoding at work. The physical act of holding the server triggers a cascade of associated memories. The weather that day in France, the smells of the fair, the conversation they were having.
So does this mean the extreme minimalist movement is actually asking us to sanitize our own personal history? Are we being encouraged to sweep away the physical evidence of our lives just to mimic a catalog?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is exactly the argument Hill is presenting. This is the ideological clash between visual quiet and narrative noise.
Right.
Minimalism, in its most extreme aesthetic form, prioritizes a frictionless environment. It asks you to exist in a space that is timeless and untethered. But human lives are inherently messy.
Very messy.
We are deeply nostalgic, and our identities are intrinsically tied to our past experiences. If you remove all the physical markers of your past, you remove the environmental triggers that prompt you to remember who you were.
So the objects are doing the work for us.
Hill argues that these objects, these memory anchors, are the safeguards against forgetting. They protect the memory of tiny, strange conversations with a fisherman in Nova Scotia. They hold on to the fleeting moments we would have otherwise lost to the sheer velocity of time. They aren't valuable in a monetary sense. Their value is entirely narrative.
They hold the narrative together in ways a perfectly clear countertop never could. So for you listening right now, taking all of this in, the next time you sigh at those dusty souvenirs cluttering up your own shelves, or the next time you feel a pang of guilt because your living room doesn't look like a frictionless, magazine-perfect sanctuary, cut yourself some slack.
Absolutely.
Remember that those mismatched pieces, that weird shell from a beach trip, or that awkward vase you dragged home on a train, they might just be the very things holding your life story together.
And that leaves us with an entirely new frontier to consider as our culture shifts.
Oh, Oh, what's that?
If physical objects, things we can touch, packing cardboard and haul across continents, serve as our essential memory anchors, what happens to the memories of a generation whose treasures are increasingly digital?
Oh, wow.
Right. If our souvenirs become nothing but photos on a cloud drive or digital assets in a video game, things we cannot physically trip over in our hallways or dust off on a Sunday, will our recall of those past versions of ourselves simply begin to fade away?
That is a wild thought. If we don't have the external hard drive sitting right there on the shelf to randomly bump into, do we slowly lose the data inside our heads?
It's entirely possible.
I love that question. So as you go about your day-to-day, take another look at the most ridiculous, logistically annoying memory anchor you own. Pick it up, feel the weight of it, and maybe just say thank you. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.